Hello, everybody. Today's guest on the podcast is Shanjean Lee. Shanjean, or SJ, is an orthopedic surgeon and an incredibly well-rounded and accomplished rock climber. Her accomplishments include V10 in bouldering, climbing 513 plus trad, and 514A sport. We talked about climbing City Park, a 13 plus trad climb in Index, Washington, while she was in the midst of her surgical residency. We talked about lessons learned from climbing her first 514 this past fall at Smith Rock, as well as her first team-free ascent of the Dark Side of Liberty, a 513 plus multi-pitch route on the east face of Liberty Bell up in Washington Pass that she climbed last summer along with her partner, Mikey Schaefer. He's both her climbing partner and her romantic partner. We talked about their process finding and projecting the Dark Side of Liberty, as well as some of the challenges of dating your climbing partner, and some of the strategies that SJ has used to navigate the give and the take of her relationship. Some really great takeaways there, and thank you to SJ for sharing that. I think it could be really helpful. We talked about her training and the takeaways from a Lattice Training assessment she did last year, about some of the differences she's observed between men and women, and some training advice specific to women, and the importance of believing in yourself when taking on things you are not sure you can do, like climbing 514. This episode was recorded back in mid-February, and we started off talking about her goal to climb V10. And some fun news is that she did that about a week after this interview took place. She sent Beefcake, the climb that she said she was working on in Bishop, and it sounds like she totally crushed it. So congrats, SJ. You may just become a boulderer yet. That is not a criticism. You guys will get the joke just a few minutes into the interview. This one was full of laughter. We talked about all sorts of stuff. It was super fun, and I got a lot out of it, and I hope you guys do too. I think it's a good one. So please enjoy this conversation with Shanjean Lee.
Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.
Feel good? Need anything?
No.
All right.
Yeah, back
Hi,
massage.
SJ. Back massage?
Yeah.
Before we get going? Oh, man. I guess it's probably the least I can do for getting an interview.
Your podcast people are getting more and more demanding, huh?
That's probably the highest demand so far. Yeah.
I'd like a 30-minute massage before we start.
Damn. All right. Well, I'll talk to Mark, try to get a portable table in here, and I don't know what I'm doing, so it might not feel good. Does the quality matter?
You know, as long as I can send tomorrow.
Okay. And if you don't, I'll just have to delete the whole interview.
Yeah, then we're done.
Got it. Okay, fair enough. So I think if people Google your name, a lot of things are going to come up around hard granite climbing, crack climbing, maybe some hard sport climbing, but they're going to be like, oh, this person is a trad climber, does hard alpine stuff, that sort of thing. But we're in Bishop right now.
Uh-huh.
And you're bouldering.
I know, I'm branching out.
How are you finding bouldering? How's that been?
I actually started climbing when I was at UCLA for undergrad. And so I actually started climbing bouldering.
Okay.
And so Bishop was kind of my original stomping grounds back in the
Really?
day. Yeah.
Okay. Not just gym bouldering.
Not just gym bouldering.
Nice.
Yeah, my actual first climbing experience was outside. Like,
oh, wow.
Ever.
Same. That's
and
cool.
So I kind of grew up climbing in a sense here.
Okay.
And as you mentioned, I really do like to climb on a rope these days. And so initially, my partner Mikey and I, when we were talking,
Yeah.
when we were talking about winter plans, he was really excited to boulder, and I was less excited because I felt like I had kind of been there, done that as far as like that part of my climbing progression. And, I've been to Bishop so much already, but then he convinced me that it would be good for climbing, that it would be fun, etc. And so, it really took a day back here before I realized, A, that yes, it's good for my climbing, and B, that it's really quite fun.
It only took one day?
It took one day.
That's pretty good.
Turns
out bouldering is fun.
I'm easily convinced, I guess. So yeah, I mean, it's just, I spent the fall in the valley, and it's, you're with one partner often, and it's really nice to just climb with friends. You're on the ground. You can start late in the day if you want.
Yeah, you don't have to haul stuff.
You don't have to. I mean, boulder pads are arguably just as unwieldy as haul bags, but they're not as heavy. But no, it's been fun to, climb with friends on the ground.
Yeah.
Eat snacks when you want to eat snacks, that kind of thing.
The important stuff. So you and we were kind of joking about this yesterday. It's funny that you and Mikey both had the same goal. You both wanted to climb V10 this season. And
we did.
Of course, he's done like 4 of them. He's smashing it. No surprises there. But you told me a funny story yesterday where I think after he did his first one, you guys had filmed it. And then you sent it to Nina and James, Nina Williams and James Lucas, to see if he was a boulderer or not. Right.
So we sent the video to Nina Williams and James Lucas because they're good friends of ours, and they're also very good at bouldering. And so Mikey and James have a little bit of a bromance going on. And so
wonderful.
They, anytime he does something, he'll often... Like James is often the first person that he tells about it. So he sent the video to those guys, A, because they're friends, and B, because they're such good boulderers. And he wanted...
affirmation?
Not affirmation. He wanted kind of constructive criticism.
Okay.
And so he wanted to know if he looked like a boulderer.
How real was that? Was that funny, or was he actually looking for... how am I moving? Am I moving like a boulder or that sort of thing?
I think it's a little of both, actually.
That's
I think
perfect.
A, it's funny, and B, I think that when he does something, he wants to be good at it. Like he wants to do it right. And so he wants to know, can I be better at this thing, And so some of it was in seriousness.
So what was the feedback?
The feedback initially was that he needs to wear brighter colors. His wardrobe is like a very, earth tone conglomerate of like
trad climber,
black, exactly, trad climber,
come on,
gray,
Mikey.
that kind
Get
of
you a
thing.
beanie.
He wasn't wearing a beanie.
Yeah.
He's wearing like his knee brace, which also...
I think those are coming back in for bouldering though.
Yeah, not the kind that he was wearing. And I think they said he needed more pop.
More pop. Okay. And that's kind of been the goal for both of you guys with this a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Get a little
bit
snappy.
more snap, yeah.
Nice. So how's the goal going for you?
It is going a little bit slower.
You haven't done one yet?
I haven't done one yet. So the goal has not, been ticked off yet.
You were trying beefcake yesterday.
I was trying beefcake yesterday, and I really like that climb. So
Okay.
it's fun to work on it.
Nice.
And then I think my goal is also to do some V9s, V8s, just kind of things that are hard for me that I can do instead of getting bogged down in one project. So
yeah.
I'm making a conscious effort to not just focus in on the V10 because I think that actually ultimately might not make you a better climber overall. So I have a tendency to get, tunnel vision. And so I'm trying to stay a little more broad this time around.
I like that. I think spending most of our time building the pyramid always a smart way to go. Cool. So what are you trying? Do you have any projects right now?
One of my projects this season was Soul Singer.
Nice.
And I did finish that one a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
And then
It's a V9 in the buttermilks.
Yep. And then in the Happies, I've been working on Cholos.
Okay.
Which is quite fun. I've,
That's
done it in
V10. That's
two
hard,
sections.
isn't it?
No, it's V9
It's
actually.
9? Oh, that's such a hard V9.
There is a extension to it where you climb into it. That's a V10 called Lowrider.
Okay.
And so that was actually Mikey's first V10.
Okay.
So he was, we were kind of concurrently working on all of those things. And then there's another V9 up at the SADS, which is this pretty arete line that we were talking about, called Slunk. And so I'm going to go back for that tomorrow.
Yeah. Nice. Are you sticking with the morning plan?
Okay.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. You're going to have to warm up the boulder for me.
I think the boulder is going to get plenty warm for you anyway.
I'm going to wait till it's dark and cold.
No, I think that's the way, honestly.
I think it is. I'm kind of psyched on the night session here. I'm kind of sold on it.
Yeah, I didn't really think about that until last night when we were out there, and I was, because at Smith, where we both have climbed a lot, it doesn't cool down as much as you often want it to right when it gets dark. And so...
Especially in the fall.
Yeah.
I think in the spring it does a little bit better, but I totally agree. In the fall it just stays kind of...
It stays kind of warm for a while. So I think in my head I was like, oh, it's going to take a while for it to cool down. But last night it just kind of cooled down.
Yeah, just like that. It's pretty quick.
Yeah.
So you live in Reno now.
I do.
Thus the bouldering in Bishop again.
Yep, exactly.
When did you move to Reno?
I moved to Reno in September of 2019.
Okay.
So I graduated from orthopedic surgery residency at OHSU in Portland on June 30th of 2019, effectively. And then afterwards, I had found a job in Reno. And so we took a couple months to travel and climb, and we headed down to Reno for my new job.
Nice.
And access to new climbing.
Are you liking it?
It's amazing.
Really?
It's super amazing.
Oh, cool. I've heard that multiple times. I've heard a lot of psych about Reno, actually.
Yeah, it is great. I think it's one of those things where you kind of want to keep it a secret about how awesome it is.
It sucks. Never mind. Take it back.
Yeah. But clearly I'm not keeping a secret right now. But it's amazing. And I think a lot of climbers are realizing that also because, your access to all different types of climbing is so good, and there's so many things to do year round. And
is that like Tahoe, Donner Summit, like that stuff? Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, you're a couple hours from the Hulk. You're, a little longer than that to Tuolumne, so you have all of that sport climbing and access to all of that granite in Tuolumne and the valley, in the summer and the fall. Yeah, in the winter, Bishop isn't that far away. And, when I'm on call, I have to be, within 45 minutes or so back to the hospital. And so, the climbing up at Donner and at Star Wall, which is climbable in the winter, is all,
Oh, is it really?
Within that, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
It's all within that time frame. So it's really nice because I do have to be on call once a month, for a week at a time, probably every month or so. And so it's nice that those days aren't a total loss, in a sense.
Got you.
From a climbing standpoint.
How late in the season can you climb up there? How late in the spring?
It depends on kind of what aspect it is. And obviously it's all still new to me, but I think at Donner you can climb through the summer at Snowshed Wall, for example.
That's kind of what I thought,
but then Star Wall is good through the winter for the most part because it's south facing. So as long as you're there, if it's really cold and it's relatively dry, you can show up there when it's sunny and have t-shirts and shorts on.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's been on my list, and I'll be coming back through that way sometime this spring.
Yeah.
I'd love to.
You should check
by.
it out. Yeah.
We should go up there.
Come on through. Yeah.
Cool. I'm curious, to what extent are you a planner? Are you already thinking about your climbing year and where you're going to be climbing as the weather changes in this new spot? Or are you more excited to kind of play things by ear and see where things take you?
I think on average, I'm probably more of a planner than most people.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that I've learned over time to be a little more loose in my plans than I used to be. I used to really like to plan things in more detail than I currently do, but it's just too much planning doesn't allow for the variables in life, and so now I like to plan kind of more in broad strokes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for the year, if this is what you're getting at, I have a general sense of, this winter we're going to spend some time in Bishop. And then in the spring, I'd like to go back to Yosemite.
Okay.
And then in the summer, I haven't been to the Hulk. So, I think we're going to try and spend some time out at the Hulk. And then, so that's kind of broad strokes.
That's exactly what I was getting at.
Yeah.
And it's interesting with you because you have an amazing resume already, but it's pretty varied, and it makes me wonder kind of what direction you're headed in, because it seems like you could kind of go do anything. What was it, a couple years ago you did City Park? You repeated City Park up in Index. And that's 13 plus pin scar crack, beautiful line on Index Wall that Todd Skinner did the first ascent of an 86. When did you do that thing?
I did that thing in the summer of 2018.
Okay.
Yeah, I think summer of 2018. Actually, it was Labor Day weekend of
Okay.
2018.
Nice.
I had been working on it. So that year, Mikey went to Peru for all of July.
Okay.
And he was down there with Josh Wharton and Steve House, and they were trying, to climb a crazy alpine peak. And so they were there for the month. And so one of the things that I like to do when he's gone is I like to take that time to focus on a project of my own. It's like a good time for that because that is effectively me time.
Yeah.
And
you
then,
guys do a lot of climbing together.
Yeah, exactly. So that's time that I can kind of dedicate toward my own goals without feeling like I'm pulling him away from his goals or anything like that. And then it also kind of keeps me occupied when he's gone so that I'm not missing him every day all the time. So
Yeah.
no, so it's so that was my project for that month effectively. So in July of 2018, I was like, okay, I'm going to just put some time in on this thing. And the great thing about it is that the reason I think it's so legendary is that it's super accessible. It's it's right in the middle of the lower town wall. You walk up to it. The warm up 5-9 that everybody gets on is the line immediately next to it. And so it's kind of right in the middle of everything. And so the reason it made a good goal was because it's hard to get people to go to places that are way out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
So you have more buy-in from partners when your project is a little more accessible, I think. And then the other reason it was great was because it was so close to Godzilla, the 5-9 next to it. I could go up there myself and just set up a fixed line on the line, and then I could mini traction it.
I was about to ask that. Yeah. How much of that did you do?
I think I did. I'd have to go back and look, but I think I did at least 6 days or 8 days.
Okay.
Yeah, something like that of mini tractioning on it. And it was super helpful. It's nice to be able to control your conditions. You can go when you want to go. And if that happens, it was July, so it was really hot. And so if that happens to be at 6 a.m. in the morning, you you don't feel bad about dragging somebody out. And so you can set up your conditions however you want them to be that way without getting in anybody's way or imposing on anybody else's schedule. So. So that's why that was a good project for me at the time.
Did you feel like there was a risk factor to that one? Is it dangerous at all, or is the gear pretty good?
The gear's really good.
Okay. I
mean, it is frequently done as an aid line, and it's a line that people frequently practice aid climbing on. And so, there's splitter cracks, and the gear is all good. The hard part is getting the gear in when you're climbing it. Yeah. Because depending on whether you're using your feet for the cracks or you're just smearing on the face, there are sections where you don't feel very secure. And so it's hard to place gear.
Got you.
Yeah. So overall, the gear is good, but the hard part is placing it. And the other hard part is the psychological effect of placing very small gear, because all of the gear is really small. Okay. Not all of it, but most of it is really small. And so then you're like, oh, is this tiny RP actually going to hold my fall or not?
So what's your process with that? Did you wait until you were pretty sure you'd be able to do it leading gear? Did you climb it clean before you tried it on go placing gear?
Yeah, so I pretty much worked on the moves first, and then after I felt like I could do the moves, I started mini tractioning and placing gear. Okay. Because I think the most challenging part of that route is figuring out what stances you need to be in order to place the gear that you need to place.
So you're mock leading to figure out sequencing.
Exactly. Yeah, because it changes the sequence. I mean, you can place your hands in whatever order you want in the crack, but if your hand ends up being in, where you need the red C3, then your sequence doesn't work. Yeah. So before I got too far into the actual kind of climbing of it, I started working on where I wanted to place gear.
Okay.
So that was the next step. There were a few days in there where I just went out with friends and they belayed me on top rope. And I found that actually pretty helpful just because I think you're more motivated when you're with friends or you can be. And so like those days were pretty helpful. I like, felt like I had less excuses those days. I tried harder. I made some breakthroughs as far as like making links on those days. And so I had a couple of those days thrown in as well. And then I don't totally remember, but I think I only let it 2 days before I sent.
Nice.
So yeah, like 2 or 3 days. And so yeah, the first time on lead, I was very shaky. It was a whole new beast.
Yeah.
And that took a few times, before I could calm the nerves down and like give it a real go.
Did you find out if the RP would hold?
I never found out if the RP would hold.
Nice.
But there is this, I was placing this cam right before, it's like kind of the middle, there's this bootleg in the crack.
Okay.
And getting up into the bootleg was the crux for me.
Okay.
I don't think it's the crux for everybody, but it was the crux for me. And so there's a piece that I put right like as I was going through the crux. And so I whipped on that a few times. And initially I had a red C3 in there. And the first time I whipped on it, I was with Luke Stefarak.
Okay.
And he was like, do you want to just, double or triple check your gear and make sure that's the piece you want to be whipping on? I was like, yeah, I've like done this on microtraction, and then kind of looked at it and I was like, yeah, maybe I'm not that excited about this piece. So I did upgrade that to a yellow C3.
Okay.
And I do appreciate, Luke is very, A, he's very supportive, and B, he's very analytical. And so like I appreciated his thoughts about safety.
Nice.
And so yeah, I felt a lot more comfortable taking that whip afterwards. That was like the only real sketchy one.
Was he trying it with you?
He was not. He was just kind enough to
Okay.
come climbing with me one day.
Got you. Was anyone else trying it with you? Were you able to feed off of other beta or other psych or anything?
Oh yeah. So I think Brittany Goris was working on it right before I was working on it. Or
Okay.
so we were working on it overlapping for a little bit, but she sent it pretty early on as far as when I was working it.
Okay.
And so she did help as far as like kind of tidbits of beta here and there.
Nice.
So that was really, really helpful.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Where did that one stack up for you at the time? Was that up there as far as like the hardest route you'd done at the time?
Yeah, it might have been the hardest route
Okay.
at the time.
Dude, that is badass. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I
Nice
actually
one.
didn't really think about it that way.
And you did Vicious Fish after that.
I think I did Vicious Fish after that,
And
and
then
I
Mr.
think I did
Yuck.
Mr. Yuck after that as
Yeah.
well. So that
Mr.
might
Yuck.
have been the hardest thing at the time.
That's awesome. You've had a good year. 2019 was a good
It
year.
was a good year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Knock on wood. She just knocked on my countertop.
You just,
Yeah. So yeah, then you climbed Vicious Fish, 13D at Smith Rock. You climbed Mr. Yuck, your first 14A at Smith Rock. Congratulations.
in reverse order, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Yuck came first.
Nice.
Go
Yeah.
figure.
Right on. That's awesome.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
Any like learning or takeaways from that one?
From Mr. Yuck or Vicious Fish.
Maybe either. Yeah.
I think one of the takeaways from Mr. Yuck was so I was getting through the crux pretty regularly, but at the top of Mr. Yuck, there's this like, I don't know if it's like a V3 or V4 or V2 or, whatever. There's like this big windmill move.
Kind of a drive-by move.
Yeah, and drive-by move to a jug. So it shouldn't be hard. Like if it was on the ground, you'd do it every single time. But it's after you do the crux of the route. And so I was falling there over and over and over again. So the crux never felt hard to me, but I just couldn't do the windmill move. And I'd like, fall and then I'd do it next go, but that doesn't really count, it turns out. And, I kept thinking that I just needed to get stronger to do the move. And so I was like, training for that move. I was like doing bicep curls because you have to like pull in on that right undercling in order to do the move. And, I was like training for that move. And in the end, I forget who I was with. I think I was either with Crit or I was with Mike Holmes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Mike Holmes. He was like, hey, do you want to feel some of the other holds around there and, like try a different way? And I was like, well, I've touched all of these holds and I think this is the way I have to do it. I just need to be stronger. So I was like convinced, like, just need to be stronger. But then I was like, fine, I'll like look at these other things. So I was like up there. I was up there for like, it was like the second session of the day because I'd done a morning session.
Okay.
And then the sun hits, it gets really hot. So then I went back for an evening session, even though I had been climbing all day. And Mike was like, you need to just like look at some other holds. And so I effectively used all the same holds that I was using, but I used them in a different order.
Huh.
And I moved my foot earlier and, I think maybe I used one additional hold or something. But in the end, I was like, oh, maybe I have to do this sequence of moves this way instead of the way I was trying it. And so then the next time I got on it, I sent it.
Oh, wow.
And so I think the lesson was like, if it's not working, maybe you should try something else instead of doing the same thing over and over and over again.
I mean, that's the crux of redpoint climbing, right?
Yeah.
It's always so hard to know what you should do. Should I just keep trying and commit to this thing, or should I look for another method?
Yeah.
So with that, did you end up finding a way where you were in that strenuous position for less time, or what did that come down to, you think?
I think I found a way to get, hold on, let me think about this. How did it go? I just found a way to make the moves a little bit less strenuous.
Okay.
Yeah, so I got my foot up earlier so that I could stand on it instead of kind of pulling off my, like, a shittier hand. And then I was able, I think it just saved just enough energy for me to like pull in and do the drive-by windmill move.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you think you've linked through all the hard climbing on that route more than anybody else?
It's hard to say.
It's good training.
I know, because initially I thought like, oh, if I could, I actually found the crux of Slit Your Wrist to be quite challenging. And I found the crux of Mr. Yuck to be doable once I had, like, quite doable because it's something that you can kind of lock down. Whereas the crux of Slit Your Wrist is a little balancy and technical and you feel like you can whip off of it.
Yeah.
And so I had told myself, like, okay, well, once you can reliably send the Slit Your Wrist crux, you can do this climb. But it turned out that was not the case.
Got a little epic.
Yeah.
Well, it was the case. It just took maybe a little longer than you expected. For listeners, Slit Your Wrist is a 13B, and then Mr. Yuck climbs through the crux of that. It's like a V7 boulder on this arete, more or less. And then it branches off, and you climb this kind of steeper head wall with another couple cruxes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you talked about bicep curls, and that just triggered something. When I was kind of poking around prepping for this, I looked at your Instagram and I saw a post. It was from September when you guys were moving to Reno, and it's just a picture of Mikey doing bicep curls in the back of a moving van. Was that a key component of your training regimen?
Yeah, you have to get in your strength training whenever you can. If you have to move boxes, you might as well put it to use.
Yeah, well, that was the funny thing. I'm like, he's doing bicep curls before unloading the van?
He was supposed to be loading the van.
It's pretty fatiguing. Oh, okay.
He was loading
he had a little more energy left.
What's it called? He was loading the dumbbell and had to, get in a little.
Pose for a shot. I'll link to that in the show notes. It's a pretty great picture. Were you doing any other training for Mr. Yuck?
I talked to my friend Paige Klassen, and I think this was prior to doing City Park, which was kind of the September before Mr. Yuck.
Okay.
And I had talked to her because she has a busy season when she's down in Africa where she's working super hard, and she had mentioned that she got a plan written out by Justen Sjong.
Okay.
And that she kind of just adhered to that program, and that helped her send her project after her busy season.
Okay.
And so that was super reminiscent. I mean, I think my life as a resident was like always the busy season, you know?
Yeah, sounds
but
like
what she, what she was describing was like very similar to my life. And I think I realized that everybody can devise their own training plan if they put enough time and research into it. I think like you could do a good job making your own training plan, but ultimately what I needed was like I needed somebody to tell me what to do.
You didn't have the bandwidth to come up with it on your own.
Exactly. I didn't have the bandwidth to come up with it on my own, and like I have a tendency, it's hard for me to know like if I've done enough, you know? I think there's always this sense of like, oh, I could do more. Like, I'm not fatigued yet. I could probably like do another set of this, or like, I should probably climb another couple routes, or, and so I had a hard time like knowing when to stop and like when to go. And so I think what appealed to me about having a training plan was just like, you go in, you do what you're supposed to do, and then you're done.
Nice.
So I wrote to Justen, and so I had him write a training plan right around City Park time, but I kind of extended it. And it was partly for Mr. Yuck, actually, also, now that I think about it again. But yeah, so he kind of just wrote out a plan for me.
Okay. And
it was super nice because I could be like, hey, these are the days I'm on call, or these are the days like I have zero bandwidth to like push hard. I can hangboard, but I can't, I can't do any like hard bouldering or limit bouldering because like, I've been up all night the night before, that kind of thing. Yes. And so it was really nice to have somebody do that for me so that I could just kind of go by the plan. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What kind of stuff were you doing?
So on Mondays, there'd be kind of strength training where you're not supposed to be tired afterwards. So like dumbbell lifts for like your shoulders, like overhead presses, like lateral lifts, like that kind of thing. And so it's pretty much just kind of basic strength training.
Okay. But at a level, like at a volume and intensity where it's just kind of like
restorative maintenance almost, you're not supposed to leave the session tired. Like I'm not like pushing my limits.
Injury prevention sort of stuff.
Yeah, injury prevention, totally.
Gotcha. All right.
So that would be Mondays because I would typically have climbed all weekend, and so Monday would normally be my rest day, and so he was like, you should do something. And then I would primarily train on Tuesdays or Thursdays, and it'd be max hangs, so like like 7 seconds on and then 2 minutes off kind of thing.
Okay.
And then like 6 sets of that. And then weighted pull-ups.
Was that just one grip position?
Usually just one grip position.
Okay. Yeah. What was that? Was that like an open hand?
I started initially with an open hand, and then it's kind of evolved into a little bit of like a half crimp. And then I might start doing open hand again, actually. But
I'm just noticing this. It looks like you have a very short pinky.
I do on this side.
In relation on one side?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
I think I have a flexion contracture on this side.
Oh, wow.
That's why it looks short, because I can't get it all the way straight.
Yeah, it's just like ready to crimp always.
Yeah. It's ready, everybody.
I'm going to try to find a picture of your pinky to share in the show notes.
I just noticed that like not that long ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I don't know if I was born like this or if this has developed over time because my hands are always like this.
That's funny. You don't know?
No, I don't know.
That's incredible.
I only started noticing it after climbing City Park because my PIP joint, this knuckle, got kind of swollen from all the pinky locks.
Dude, I bet it's from that.
Maybe.
I reached out to Brittany because I'm like kind of psyched to maybe check that thing out. And I was like, is it possible? Like, can I fit my fingers? And she's like, I don't know. Do you have strong pinkies?
Yeah.
I'm like, all right. Start training pinky monos, I guess. And
no, it's crazy. I mean, I think that's definitely irritated it. But yeah, hard to say.
Nice. All right, so little injury prevention, max hangs, weighted pull-ups.
Weighted pull-ups. And then it kind of just like depends on like what phase of the cycle you're in, you know? And so whether that's limit bouldering on the second training day or, you know, 4x4s, like that kind of thing. So like nothing super sophisticated, but just to have like a written program. And then on the weekends, I would just go rock climbing. So during that period of time, it was primarily Smith Rock.
Okay. Got you. Yeah. Is that something you're still is that more or less your program these days, or what are you doing now?
Yeah, a little bit. So Justen is no longer writing training plans, much to my dismay. Yeah. And so one of our friends, Josh Wharton, really likes kind of like working out the intricacies of training as well. So I've like, you're
well connected. You have a lot of opportunities to connect with.
I just have people. There's just a lot of people you meet along the way who are also psyched about rock climbing.
Hell yeah. Totally. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so, you know, I've asked him for kind of tips here and there as well, kind of broad strokes stuff. And then I actually recently got like a Lattice Training assessment.
Oh, did you?
Mm-hmm. And then I had they have like a mini, like a light plan, I think is what they call it. And so again, it's like I just was looking for like a general plan.
Okay.
And so they kind of gave me like a general 90-day plan.
Okay.
So yeah, so I've been using their app for quite a while. It's
the Crimpt App. Cool. I'll link to the Lattice Lite and I'll link to the Crimpt App in the show notes.
Yeah, the app one of my friends showed me a few years ago, and it's really user friendly, and I think it breaks down the categories of training really well. And so you're like, oh, like this cycle, I need to be working on power. And so, you know, they have like a power section or like a finger strength section. And so it's easy to just click on that particular type of workout and then they have it. Yeah. And they have like an explanation, and then there's like a timer kind of thing. And so it's very like nicely integrated, and you can like log your workouts and stuff. So I found that app super helpful. And so I was like, you know, I should reach out to these guys and, you know, see if they can write a plan. So
yeah. Were there any takeaways from the assessment?
Surprisingly, they told me that the area in which I was lacking was my flexibility.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's totally not what I expected. So, but, you know, they only assess certain things, right? So there's only certain parameters, and they don't watch, in this assessment I did, they like don't watch you climb or anything. And so they assessed strength, they assessed endurance. So strength was based on like how much your max hang was on a finger.
So this is strength and endurance all kind of localized to your fingers and forearm.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Exactly. So then it's like strength was measured by max hangs, and then power or endurance was measured by how many repeaters you could do on the hangboard. And then there was the flexibility, and then I forget what the last one was. I think it was like a weighted pull-up. Okay. But I think what they didn't measure, and the reason why I'm in Bishop bouldering, is they didn't measure power or like, I don't know the other word for it, but you know, like pop effectively, you know, because it was like, because it was like, they're like, oh, your finger strength is above average for the grade you're climbing. Your strength is above average. You know, everything was above average except for the flexibility. But I think where I'm lacking is like the power, you know, like I can barely campus, you know? And so they're like, oh yeah, just do like 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 on the campus board. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I can do 1, 3, 4.5. So I can't do multiple sets of 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 because I can't get there. So I think that was like one area in which the assessment was lacking.
Yeah. Well, that, I mean, it sounds like that still kind of led you to
where I need to work on.
Yeah. Cool. That makes me think of something else. I also saw a photo on Instagram, and I'll link to this one too, but it was a photo of you moonboarding, or you and your friends having a moonboard session. I think you're with Bailey Speed and your friends Liz and Amory.
Amory, yep.
Have you been doing much of that?
I would love to.
Yeah, that's a really helpful power training tool.
It is super helpful, but unfortunately...
Oh, no.
As far as I know, there are no moonboards in Reno.
Oh, come on,
proper.
Reno.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Not a single moonboard in the
I know.
world.
So I would love it if, you know...
Would you guys ever get one for your...
Yeah.
Did you buy a house?
Not yet.
Okay.
That's my life dream, is to...
Have your own moonboard?
Yes. I have
think
very
you can
few
get
life
there.
goals.
Yeah, that's very achievable. Nice. You're going to be really happy. Like, I achieved all of my life goals.
I have a moonboard in my garage.
Nice.
But that
So
is one of the criteria as far as the houses we're looking at.
Yeah, tall garage.
Because you have to have a
or
tall
something.
garage, yeah. And so...
Totally.
So sometimes Mikey's been showing me houses, and I'm like, "Why are you even looking at that? The garage is
8-foot
not
garage, dude.
big enough."
Get out of here.
And so
That's perfect.
I think there are moonboards in the area, but like within like 30 to 45 minutes. But there's none in Reno.
Okay.
So
Got you.
that's the one drawback
All right.
of Reno.
So that was in Portland.
We were still in Portland.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got you. Did you do that long enough to see whether or not it helped?
Yeah,
You think it did?
the moonboard, as far as for my climbing, is
Yeah.
the perfect training tool for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think it requires that you pop,
Yeah.
and whether you have a foot under you or not, you kind of have to go. And so it helped make my climbing a little bit more dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it was super helpful.
Nice. I can really relate to that. I think anyone that has spent a lot of time at Smith or doing the kind of like really technical granite climbing that you do,
Yeah.
you need to just moonboard.
No, yeah, that's
helps
the
a lot.
problem.
It's like the thing we're all missing.
I know.
Yeah.
Because when I would say when I started climbing, I used to be poppier. But as I've gotten a little bit more into, like Smith climbing and granite climbing, it's not a tool you really use. And sometimes it's like counterproductive. And so I've like lost that skill. And so I need it back.
Interesting. Yeah. Got you. So there's one big ticket item on your resume that we haven't talked about yet. And that is the first ascent that you and Mikey did on the east face of Liberty Bell.
Oh, yes.
Tell me about that.
So
This is August 2019?
This is August 2019
Okay.
that we sent it. But we had put in work we started looking at it in May of 2018.
Okay.
So kind of as a background,
How did you guys find it? Was it an 8-line or anything, or was it just an unclimbed face, and did you find it together?
yeah. And so as background, Mikey's been climbing on the east face of Liberty Bell for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so I think one of the reasons is that he has family. His brother lives up in Winthrop.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And
Okay.
so it's like a great place to spend summertime because that's the season to be climbing up at Washington Pass. And also it's like great to be spending time with Mikey's brother, John, and his wife, Adrian, and, the kids, Ty and Reed. And so it's just kind of like a fun overall experience. And so I think that's why Mikey's gone there kind of year after year, is that like, it's more than just the climbing. There's also like, the family aspect there
Nice.
as well.
Cool.
Yeah. And so the family is there, but the rock is actually amazing,
Yeah.
which is the other reason he's gone back there year after year. And so he has put up quite a few lines on the east face. And so, over the years has really like examined every inch of that rock, I feel like. And I think the only unexamined aspect was that northeast corner.
Okay.
And so the rock there is a lot different than on the east face because it's just steeper. Because the east face is a little bit of like this big slab, and so there are steep features, but it's a bell-shaped thing, so
Yeah.
it's overall pretty slabby. But on the northeast face, it's quite steep, and the rock is a little bit different color, that kind of thing. So this was ultimately Mikey's brainchild. And so he's been looking at this rock for a while and just like that aspect of it. And he was like, we should go check it out. The rock might be terrible or it might be great, but we just won't know until we go look at it. And so I was like, sure, let's go look at it. So in May of 2018, we were up there and it was very warm that year. And so it was climbable in May. So we were like, okay, we're going to go up.
And this is Washington Pass.
This is up in Washington
What's the
Pass.
elevation there?
Oof. I want to say like 6,000 feet,
Okay.
something like that.
It's definitely a summer spot.
Yeah, it's definitely a summer spot. And it's we've been historically up there in August or so because the east face goes in the shade at noon. So you can climb, in the afternoon in
that's
pretty
perfect.
good conditions.
Nice.
Yeah. And it can get kind of windy up there and it can get chilly. And so August is like often the most dependable time.
Okay.
So we went up there very early that year in May because it was like unseasonably nice. And so we climbed a route next to it and then rappelled down into it to check out the rock.
Uh-huh.
We climbed.
I feel like there's a story there. You should kind of laugh halfway through mentioning the route to the left of it.
Well, so initially we climbed Blake's. Blake had put up a new route that's kind of Blake Harrington. That's a conglomeration of things just to the left of this line. And we climbed that and realized that we couldn't see any of the features that we wanted to. It was too far around right.
Okay.
So then we were like, okay, the other way to access this is up this kind of like rampy 5'9" to the right. And then as you top out the ramp, the feature joins with the top of one of the ret that we're looking at effectively. So we're like, oh, it's 5'9", no big deal.
Okay.
We're just gonna go climb a barber pole. But it was winter conditions, like it was like.
What do you mean? It's like mixed ice and stuff?
It was like mixed snow and rock, and so there were like pitches where we were like, oh. We like mid-pitch had to put our boots back on.
Oh, God.
And like climb in our boots. And then finally we would hit enough rock where we could put on our climbing shoes again. But like we weren't prepared for that because we were like, oh, we're just going to scramble up this 5'9".
La-di-da.
And so we're like mixed climbing on like chaussy stuff. It was terrible. We were both, I think, a little. We weren't mentally prepared for that kind of adventure. So anyway, but we made it.
You wrapped down the wall.
We wrapped down the wall, and the rock was amazing.
Oh, cool.
So good.
Were you stoked? Just getting
We were stoked.
So excited.
It was super cool.
Yeah.
It's just, you just don't know, and so we brought a bolting kit with us. So we placed anchors at pretty much like ledge to ledge. It ended up being about 40 meters. And so we placed anchors pretty much every 40 meters on the way down.
Okay.
And then on the way down, there were actually like right off kind of the area of the end of the first pitch, there were like clusters of random anchors and tat and stuff. So there was like one kind of in the line that we wanted to go, and then there was one to the right and one to the left. And so I think it turned out that a couple parties had tried to climb this line ground up. I think one of them being Blair Williams, who lives in Redmond, Oregon now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I think neither of the parties had been able to kind of finish out the route. But there were signs that other people had been there previously.
Okay.
And so, we talked to Blair, and I forget who the other person was, but I think we got the okay to kind of keep at it.
Nice.
So
cool.
Yeah.
So you guys end up doing the first ascent of the Dark Side of Liberty. And I mean, I'm just pulling this from the write-up that you did. It's like 1,100 feet, 513 plus, like 4 or 5 pitches of business.
Yeah. No, I was just chuckling about the grade and the name because Mikey
it's basically a V10, right?
Yeah.
I know. So I'm reading this and I'm reading your write-up. When is that going to come out? Am I going to be able to share that, your write-up and those photos and stuff?
I think that I'll let you know. Let me ask.
Cool. I'll keep listeners posted because it's pretty cool. It'd be fun to share that eventually.
Yeah, the write-up that I sent to Stephen was what we had submitted for the AAJ journal. So whenever that comes out, I'm not really sure what time of year it does.
Okay.
But they're compiling that now.
Got you.
But I was just chuckling about the grade and the name because Mikey and I...
It's actually just your hardest boulder problem.
Yeah. Because Mikey and I like debated quite a bit about this, because Mikey has like a bit of a reputation of like, being a sandbagger.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't I mean, I think he's quite realistic ultimately, but like nobody would say that his climbs are easy.
No
you know?
one would ever say that.
No, like you have to earn the rating on his climbs. So there was some discussion as to how hard this crux pitch was. So this is the fourth pitch of the climb. And, you know, the rest of it is like, you know, the first pitch is 512 plus, and the second pitch is 513 minus. And then, so that's, and then that, and the third pitch is like a 511, and then the crux pitch is the 513 plus. And so it by far is the hardest part of the route. And there's this boulder problem on it that is by far the hardest part of the route. And so like everything else is pretty consistent, but this boulder problem is very identifiably the crux.
Yeah.
And it's just funny because neither of us had really been bouldering very much up until then. And so we just didn't really know
it's hard on that kind of thing too. I mean, what's the nature of it? Is it just like heinous vertical granite climbing?
Yeah, it is.
Super
so you go from this jug to you like go around this corner and you establish yourself on these like tiny, we call them potato chip holds.
Okay.
And then you have to like get your foot out right onto this face, onto just kind of like a terrible, you know, granite foothold. And then you have to shift your weight over right and kind of like match feet, shuffle your feet right and get them up. And then you do this really hard crank up to this gas stone hold. Okay. And then you have to transfer your weight onto it and like pop your left hand up, and then you kind of do this throw to a jug.
Okay. And is this like vertical or is it a little steep right there?
It is like the entry moves are vertical and then it goes into a roof feature. Gotcha. And then after you hit the jug, and by jug, I'm using that term like very loosely. It's like an entire, you know, pad.
One pad edge.
But it is very much a jug compared to
That's
the prior
such a
holds.
granite alpine climber thing to do. Huge jug.
It's huge. And then from there, you do like another boulder problem that's probably like V5 or so, like under clings. It's out the roof feature. And then you kind of like have to get up and over this roof and establish yourself up and over it. And so we just didn't really know what a V9 or V10 would be like. And so we're like, maybe it's V9/V10, but we don't really know. And so we try to recruit friends of ours who are strong and who've climbed V9 and V10 to like come verify the grade. So
yeah. Did that work?
So it did. Anybody? So we had there are quite a few of the Washington contingent climbing with us on it. It was pretty fun. We had like some Winthrop locals like Seth Keena and Steph Williams, and then Blake Harrington was out there. Kerwin Lakusa came out.
Okay, I just met him in Leavenworth.
Yeah, he's great. And he was actually up there micro-tractioning for fun the day that we sent.
Nice.
And then we had, who we were really interested in having come was Nathan Hadley.
Oh, yeah.
Because, you know, he definitely knows what V9, V10 boulder feels like.
Yeah, 11, 12.
Yeah, and much, much higher. And then he also had just sent the Canadian Alpine Trilogy.
Oh, yeah.
Like the 3-5-14s up in Canada. And so he also had been like doing that kind of climbing all summer. And so he came down and did the second ascent of the route, which was super cool.
Awesome.
And did it in really short time, which is kind of as we expected. But it was nice to hear his feedback on it.
Yeah, what did he say?
I think he agreed with the V9, V10 status.
Nice. And
he said that
it's still your hardest boulder problem.
I know. You can't make this shit up.
Oh my gosh.
And he said it was very comparable to the Canadian trilogy he had just done.
Oh, hell yeah.
So he felt like the 514s up there might be a little on the soft side. And then ours was, you know, probably a little hard for 513 plus. So he was like, oh, if you want a lot of people to come climb this, then you should call it 514.
And Mikey Schaefer absolutely couldn't do that.
No, because then Nathan was like, but, you know, like if we're honest here, it's probably really hard 513, 513
Yeah,
plus. And so of course, that's where the grade settled.
That's awesome. That's fantastic. So you guys check it out in May. Did you say May 2018?
Referring to what?
When you first wrapped down it and put in the anchors?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you work it on it much that first season?
No. So we went back that summer, so in August of 2018 to work on it.
Okay.
And we did the majority of the toiling and like the work, the cleaning, like equipping it, that
because you had to put a lot of bolts in on it.
Yeah,
right?
thing, it's a mixture of gear and bolts, but all of the hard climbing is bolted.
Sick.
Yeah. And it is set up so like if you are a 512 climber or, a 513 minus or 512 climber, I think you can pull through the cruxes.
Okay.
So because we just felt like the climbing on it is so good that it'd be a shame if like only the people who felt like they could climb 513 plus were getting on it. So
that's awesome to hear.
Yeah, it's
and
quite cool.
That was going to be my next question too, is like how good did it end up being?
It ended up being really good.
Is it amazing? The whole thing?
Yes, we were super lucky. So
cool. How many pitches is it total?
It's 10 pitches total.
Okay.
And I would say that toward the top, the rock gets to be a little bit more mediocre.
Okay.
So it's kind of like the top of any mountain, for the most part, like as you get to the summit, the rock quality is less ideal.
Mm-hmm.
But, the first 4 pitches are great rock. And then the 5th pitch is this kind of beautiful, kind of like reminiscent of Yosemite corner hand crack overhanging thing that goes into this kind of off-width climbing. And then the 6th pitch is a very hard 511, like 511 plus, arguably 512 minus kind of bouldery crack climb.
Okay.
And then there's like a little pitch of wandery kind of 5'9", and then there's this mega 5'11" overhanging hand crack pitch.
Okay.
After that, which is amazing, kind of just worth doing.
Yeah.
I wish it like went on for like pitches on end, but it's unfortunately just that one pitch. And then there's a face climbing pitch after that, and then kind of the rest is rompy. So,
okay.
Yeah. So overall, it's a fun day.
That sounds amazing. A fun day. Yeah. How did you find the off-width section?
It's not bad.
Okay.
It's short-lived, and it's like a pretty mellow off-width as far as off-widths are concerned.
Okay.
There's like feet out on the face, like that kind of thing.
Got
so.
you. And you guys ended up doing a team free ascent?
We did.
Can you speak to the style that you guys climbed it in? Because and I can say this as a boulder or sport climber who knew nothing about this stuff and still knows probably pretty little. But when you say team free, I don't think a lot of people necessarily know what the implication of that is. So how did you guys go about that? What was the style that you free climbed it in?
That's a good question. So the standards, I think overall, like ultimately the gold standard is, if you send a climb and you lead every pitch, that's like the ultimate gold standard. Like when it comes down to climbing with a partner who also wants to climb, like it's not realistic, right? And so I think the style that Mikey and I have generally employed is that we each lead the crux pitches. So if there's a question whether that pitch is going to be like a stopper pitch on whether you redpoint it or not, like redpoint the route, then we both will lead it.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit more time consuming, but on some of the things that we've freed that we feel like are important to us, like on Liberty Crack, on Liberty Bell, for example, like we both...
That's another 513.
And so on that, we both felt like there's like a 513 pitch on there, and then there's a 512 slab pitch that kind of helps the route go free. And so we felt like, those pitches were both important to freeing the route. So like on that climb, we both led it. And so it takes a little bit more as far as like shenanigans and, it makes the day longer, that kind of thing. But when the climbing is important to us, then we'll try and do it in that style.
Nice. That's kind of seems, in my mind, that's like the prevailing style with partner ascents these days. Is that kind of true?
I think so. And then I think
Like it makes me think of the Dawn Wall. Like that seems like how they did.
Yeah.
They did that. They both led all the hardest stuff, and then they just team freed
the rest of it. Yeah. And yeah, I think that is like a good balance of practical logistics and also like keeping up a standard.
Cool.
You know? But like of note, we did not do that for this route. So Mikey had freed all of the pitches. He had already led all of the crux pitches on lead, like in the days as we were working up to it.
Yeah.
And so the day that we sent the route, the goal was to see if I could send the crux pitch on lead because I hadn't yet.
Okay.
But then when I sent it on lead, all of a sudden we were like, oh, we should just take this thing to the top.
Okay. Yeah.
But we didn't, like, we weren't planning on going to the top that day. So we had started late, you know. And so, yeah, we had started really late morning, like midday. And so we didn't have time for him to also lead the crux pitch, but he had already led the crux pitch previously and sent it. And so we decided to just call that good.
And that day, had you guys free climbed up to that pitch?
Yeah. So we had free climbed up to that pitch. We had like
that seems super legit.
Yeah. So we had each sent each of the pitches we had led, and like the follower had sent all of the pitches that day so far. So we were kind of like, oh, we're all set up to send this thing. Let's just go to the top. So
got you.
I
think
he
didn't lead it that day, but he followed it. And
he followed it,
and he had already led it.
Yeah.
Oh, dude.
Exactly.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So that's why we decided to call it good. But I think, you know, had we had our preference, we would have both led the fourth pitch
on that
specific day. But you know, again, you're just kind of splitting hairs at this point. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Where does that? Am I missing any other big ones? I mean, I'm curious. The kind of the highlights that we've talked about. Does that one really stand out up there at the top?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, you know, as far as goals go, I think you often remember the ones that you like really had to struggle for, and then, you know, you overcame the struggle, and then everything was awesome.
Yeah.
And I think that this one was a little bit anticlimactic in some sense because like I felt like we prepared for it super well. And so like I think we both knew that we could both do it. And so it wasn't, you know, like a big struggle that we overcame kind of thing. I think we both felt like it was within our capabilities. And so at the end it was less like ecstatic hooray, you know, but you know, thinking about the whole experience.
All the prep and everything.
And just kind of doing something like this with your partner and like both succeeding at it is like something that doesn't happen very often and is super special, you know? And so, and also I have never put up a new route before. And so I just learned so much from Mikey. And, you know, obviously he took the reins through a lot of like the initial logistics and planning of it. But, you know, I kind of felt like I was in rock climbing residency there for a little bit. And, you know, I learned a lot. And so that was, you know, that was a part of the experience that was also very rewarding.
Very cool. And you had done a number of other ones on that same feature. Okay. But you were just less involved in the process on those ones. Those were repeats of things that Mikey had put up beforehand?
Yes, exactly.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so, I mean, each of the routes that I've climbed on there have been like special to me for one reason or the other. But you're right. Like this one is extra special. So
nice.
So yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. One thing I'd love to ask you about, I mean, even though it sounds like you guys kind of showed up and just executed it pretty quickly, there wasn't a ton of drama. That climbing style is still a pain in the ass and stressful. Do you have any advice for projecting something like that with the person you're dating? Can I ask you that?
I mean, you can't ask me. I don't know that I have any like sage advice because it's a work in progress.
That's a great answer.
And I can't say that like we have it dialed by any means.
Nobody does. I think we're all just figuring shit out.
I know. But yeah, I think, is your question about like working something on a wall with somebody or just working a project?
It could be like communication, things you've kind of learned about communication from that experience, or just navigating the relationship in stressful circumstance like that.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've learned over time, you know, with Mikey in particular, is that he's better than me. You know, he's like a better rock climber. He's been doing it for longer. He's stronger than I am. And with that comes certain stressors. You know? Because you don't want to always feel like you're the one holding up the team, you know? And like, ultimately, I'm always the one holding up the team, which is not a good feeling, I have to say, you know? And so how that manifests itself has evolved over time. And like, I've learned that A, this is the case, and B, like how I need to deal with it so that we can kind of like ameliorate the effects of this a little bit more, you know? It's hard because it's like, our skill levels aren't so disparate that we're like climbing on totally different things. It's like we're climbing on similar things. It's just he's going to do it faster than I will, you know? And like he could probably be climbing on different things than the things that we're climbing on together. But so it often, or has in the past, like it kind of stresses me out, to be honest, you know, because you're like, oh, like we're on this wall and like he's going to send this pitch and like it's going to take me like who knows how many more tries, you know, and it's kind of getting cold and it's getting dark and he's getting cold because he hasn't climbed in like 2 hours because I've been like working on this pitch. And so, you know, I think for this route in particular, I think that the nice part of it was that, you know, we did work it on mini traction. Okay. And so we had fixed ropes on there both seasons, like in 2018 and 2019. And so I was able to go to the route earlier than he was this season. Oh, okay. And so I was able to put in like 3 or 4 more days in it before he was available and before he got there. Nice. And so that, you know, like that kind of headway helped me out a little bit as far as just like preparation and just like feeling like I wasn't going to hold the team up, like that kind of thing. Like I was privileged in this instance to be able to do that. It's like not something that you can always do, you know, when you're climbing a route. Yeah. So sometimes it's like we climb routes that he wants to do and I just know, you know, that I have a lower chance of sending it. And then, you know, I try hard. I like chalk it up to having a good experience and like being a good partner. And like, for example, we went down to Mexico to climb Logical Progression. What's that? It is this beautiful multi-pitch big wall sport climb. Okay. In Mexico, it's Basiseachi National Park, and it's on this feature called El Gigante. Okay. And it's beautiful. It's super fun. I think it's like 513 minus, but the reason it's hard is it just has so many 512 pitches, like 512 pitch after 512 pitch after 512 pitch. And I think the tricky part of it is that the bulk of the hard climbing is, so there's 2 ledges. And there's like, you wrap into the route. And so you stash you can stash your water and supplies like at the ledges on your way down. Okay. Which is like a very civilized way
it sounds fantastic.
Of big wall climbing. But it also means that you have to get to your next ledge to get to your supplies. Okay. And so, you know, when we were down there climbing, we went as a 3-pack. Mikey and I went with our friend Max Tepfer. Okay, yeah. And you know, it's like, it became very clear on the second day, or like when we're trying to get between ledge 1 and ledge 2, it's like unless you're flashing the pitches, there's not enough time for like me to be like working out a pitch that I fell on or whatever, you know? And so like at a certain point in time, you just have to be like, okay, I'm not going to send this time. We need to like support Mikey to do his thing so that he can send and, you know, like, and so that we can all get to the next ledge where our food and water is kind of thing. So,
Got you.
So that's like, you know, you do, you know, so on some routes, I'm like, okay, this is what he wants to do. And my chance of sending is lower. And like, I kind of have to accept that kind of thing. And then other times, you know, in the relationship, it's like, okay, I want to do X route. And then even though he's done it before, he'll come and, you know, be a good sport and support me. So there's our give and take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Mm-hmm. And then he leaves, and then you just get to pick your own project and do that.
And session on that. So it's a balance of Mikey being here and Mikey not being here.
Well, cool. Thanks so much for sharing that. That's super interesting. I think that could be helpful insight for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's
always hard to navigate that stuff.
It is, and there's so much to it, and I think climbing really heightens your emotions in a lot of settings, and so it's hard not to bring in relationship baggage when your emotions are heightened sometimes, and you know, when you're like cold and tired, that kind of thing. And so and
your feet hurt because you've been in climbing shoes all day,
etc. So I think like managing that boundary is also quite hard for people, including us. Yeah. So, but we're working on it.
Yeah. That's cool. You guys, I mean, my perception is that you guys both are really great communicators. It's really easy to talk to you. I've had really extensive, long, great conversations with Mikey. So I imagine that you guys are able to talk through things.
It's like I said, it's a work in progress.
Perfect. So you're a doctor climber. I think something that people might perceive, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, she's a doctor. She's climbed 514. She's climbed 13 plus trad. She's climbed 13 plus like the big wall alpine stuff. But I've seen you enough times at Smith. I kind of see like behind the curtain a little bit. And
what do you mean?
And what I'm trying to get at is it's not this like wonderful, glorious thing all the time, and you earn every bit of it. Like I really have seen you hustle a lot. You know, I'll go into Smith and it's like, oh, it's 8 a.m. and SJ's already warmed up and she's already put like 3 burns in on Vicious Fish, and she's, I'm going to climb with. Cool, I walked in by myself and I get to climb with Mikey for the rest of the day because SJ has to drive back to Portland at like 9 a.m. So yeah, I've seen you do the hustle, and it's very impressive and inspiring, but I'd love to hear what some of the challenges have been with that and how you think about that.
Yeah, so you're right. It is not obviously not as glamorous or as successful as it looks from the outside. And I mean, I think overall, I feel really lucky to be able to do all the things that I do. And I think I'm privileged because I have people around me in all of the things that I do that are super supportive and understanding. But it is challenging. And I think initially the hardest challenge for me was internal.
Okay.
So it was, you know, these two worlds, there is like a lot of crossover, but there are not very many orthopedic surgeons who also want to climb at a high level, you know, like, and there are not a lot of high level climbers who are like, oh yeah, I want to dedicate like all the rest of my time in life to being an orthopedic surgeon. So there's just not that many people who do both things. And I think my initial biggest struggle was to even think that that would be a possibility. Like to
believe it was possible.
To believe that I could be a surgeon and also rock climb at a level that I wanted to. And, you know, I struggled with it a lot initially. And so this is kind of getting way back into the weeds of it, but when I was in medical school, you choose a specialty, and then from there you apply into a residency program where you like train to be that type of specialist.
Okay.
And I had been interested in orthopedic surgery, but I wasn't sure I could hack it. You know, like I just didn't know if I could be a good orthopedic surgeon and still do the things I wanted to do. And so I ended up starting my training program, my residency in a different program, because on some level I was too scared, I think, to commit to it. And then, that's kind of the way things shook out in the end. And then I ultimately realized that, like, if you were going to spend so much time working at a career, you might as well do what you want to do. Because no matter what you do for a career, like, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, if you're going to be good at it, you have to put time into it. And so I switched into orthopedic surgery. And when I first switched, it was a big struggle for me. Because, aside from it just being hard work, there's very few role models. Like, there are very few orthopedic surgeons who are out doing the things I wanted to do. And so I just didn't know that it could be done, and I think ultimately that was the biggest challenge, because I was unwilling to let go of rock climbing, but I couldn't see how it would fit into my life.
Yeah.
And over time, through snippets, like little snippets of success in my climbing life, like where I was like, oh, this is my next goal. Like, I wanted to climb a 513, and so, this was a little bit ago, but, I was like, okay, I'm going to make a training plan and just see if I can, like, fit, the 20 minutes of time I have in, like, between, my case and then, like, my reading to do this workout. And, over time, I realized I could do it, like I could, like, it doesn't take a lot to maintain a certain level of climbing fitness. And if you don't expect every workout to be perfect, if you don't think like, oh, okay, like I have to get in like my limit bouldering in today, because that isn't reality, right? Like when you have like a crazy schedule in residency, you kind of just like slot in whatever you can. So you're like, oh, I have 20 minutes. Like I'm going to do a hangboard workout in this 20 minutes because that's all you have, But over time, I was able to demonstrate to myself that this was enough to work. And so over time, I had enough experiences to prove to myself that like I could make this work. And ultimately, like I overcame my like own internal struggle with myself.
Got it.
Yeah. So that was probably like the biggest challenge in the scheme of things.
And how do you think about that now? Do you feel like you have gotten to a point where you're able to balance this with the level of rock climbing that you want to be at? Or has there been, or have you had to adjust your expectations with either your career or with climbing at all to make them both work?
Of course. Yeah. I think it's a little of both.
Okay. I
think that you really can't be like cutting edge in more than one thing, So if you're like, your focus is on two things, like there's no way you're going to be cutting edge in either thing, And so I reset my expectations. And so, I'm not going to be a cutting edge orthopedic surgeon, but ultimately what I want is I want to be a safe orthopedic surgeon. Like I want to do my procedures well. I want to give good care to my patients, but like, I'm probably not going to be the one designing like the cool new implant that we use in a hip replacement, or like, starting a company to do that, or, like discovering new research, like that kind of stuff. Like I know I'm not going to be cutting edge in the field that way. And then like the same in climbing, it's like I could be a better climber if I spent more time on it. But ultimately, I think that I can perform at the level that makes me happy right now. And so that is enough for me.
You think? Nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And obviously you can always be better.
Yeah.
But I think that the way that things have worked out, like I have the opportunity to get better at both things still. And so I'm really lucky on that regard.
And you can just combo, you can try to be the best rock climbing orthopedic surgeon.
I've done a lot of first orthopedic surgeon ascents, I bet.
That's a long acronym. That's awesome. Cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wish you'd known when you were first getting into your residency?
I think what I do wish I had known was So in these fields, specifically in medicine, things are done a certain way. Like there's definitely a hierarchy. There's like a way of like advancing through the ranks kind of thing. There's like a very specific culture. And I mean, I'm sure it's like this in multiple fields, but it's very like clear cut in medicine. Like there's a certain way to behave, you know, there's certain things you're expected to do. And if you want to be successful in this career, you ultimately should be doing all of these things, you know? And like as somebody who likes to at least be proficient at the things I'm doing, I kind of subscribe to this culture, I think, more than I should have. And so like in my mind, I was like, the only way to be good at orthopedic surgery is to like do all of these things that I'm, quote, supposed to be doing. And I mean, I think there's something to be said for participating in the system, because I think the system is there for a reason. Like the system is there to make safe orthopedic surgeons. I think a lot of the, you know, quote, busy work that we do in residency does serve a purpose, you know, like it kind of like teaches you to manage patients in a certain way, or, you know, there's like a reason a lot of these things exist. But I feel like in my mind, I had always thought like, I need to do what all of these other people do in order to be a good orthopedic surgeon.
Okay.
And that picture never really included like extracurricular activities because, you know, as far as surgery is concerned, like extracurricular activities are just for fun. But like to me, rock climbing, it is fun, but like it's ultimately so important to me that I can't imagine not doing it, you know? And so, but I don't think that most orthopedic surgeons have that thing outside of medicine.
Right.
And so I just wish I had known a little bit ahead of time that like it is okay to not participate in like every single activity, you know, that was part of the orthopedic surgery track, so to speak. And like if I didn't do everything, that didn't mean I was going to be bad at orthopedic surgery.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes sense.
That does, I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's just there is such an ingrained culture, and it's very easy to fall into the trap of thinking like I need to do things the way that they have been done in order to be successful. And so it just took me a while to like
kind of challenge that. Did you feel pressure from your peers to follow those norms?
I think that there is kind of subconscious pressure. Like, I don't think that people are overtly pressuring to do things, but you know, it's like, it's even simple things like, okay, my co-residents are like going out on the boat this weekend, you know, nothing to do with orthopedic surgery, but like it's part of networking, you know, it's part of like building your team and like making your team stronger, you know, but like I never took part in any of those activities because I was like, oh, I want to be rock climbing, but like in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, should I be participating in these things that like ultimately make my team stronger, you know? And so it's like stuff like that, or like, you know, I probably went to fewer conferences than my peers did, and like that kind of thing. And so there was no overt pressure, but I think it was more like internal pressure that I placed on myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. So I have a note here. I was asking you about reading, whether or not you read. And I just have a note that says roar. It says roar book. Tell me about what you've been reading.
As a caveat, I haven't finished it yet.
Okay.
And
is the book titled Roar?
The book is titled Roar. It's by Dr. Stacy Sims. And so I haven't finished it, and I haven't like looked any deeper into the research behind it.
Okay.
So I can't say that all of this is, you know, tried and true, but it's really it's been really interesting to me because as a part of training, Mikey and I have been trying intermittent fasting. Okay. With very different results. So, interesting. Okay. Yeah, it's been super interesting. And so what does that look
like for you? Is that every day?
Like primarily doing like the 16-8 schedule.
So you eat within an 8-hour window and then you fast for 16 hours.
Exactly.
Okay.
You know, so Mikey's results with it have been outstanding. You know, he's effectively become lean and mean, you know, like he's lost the weight, he's become stronger overall. It's really worked for him. For me, I've actually put on a bunch of weight.
Interesting.
With the fasting. And so I'm actually heavier now than I had been for as long as I can remember.
Okay. Do you have a sense of your body composition? Like, is there a chance it's been muscle, or do you not know?
I don't totally know.
Okay.
Like, there's a chance some of it is muscle, but I suspect that some of it is fat as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just haven't been feeling that great with it. And so I feel heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Not like in like, oh, I have more muscle way. I just feel heavier. So,
like in a rock climbing got harder sort of way.
yeah, exactly. You know the feeling, right? And so it's I started kind of like researching it a little bit more. And so this book came up, and it came up the same week that I was trying to plan out my birth control.
Okay.
I was like trying to figure out like when to take it, etc., so that, you know, I didn't have my period when we're like going to be on a big wall on the first week of March, effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And then also plan it around like, you know, when I feel good and when I feel bad and when I want to send my projects, vice versa. So the book is about, it's like exercise physiology geared toward women specifically. Okay. And it's quite interesting because they touch on both topics. So as far as the intermittent fasting goes, her theory is that it actually raises your hormones. And so it pretty much produces a stress response that tells women's bodies to store fat. And so she rigorously does not support intermittent fasting for women.
I've heard that before.
Yeah. And then the hormone part of the kind of birth control, which was surprising to me, was also that the part of the month where you have higher hormones is kind of the couple weeks right before your period. So it's not actually like the day of your period that you feel terrible. It's like those days before. And so while having your period might be annoying, it's often not kind of like the worst time for performance. So I thought the book was really relevant to kind of the things I was thinking about recently. And there's just not a lot of information out there about these things as they apply to women. And I think there's like very like, you know, there's very like physiologically different things going on. And it just kind of is helping me kind of think about these things a little bit more, you know, as I'm showing up climbing each day and, you know, figuring out like what I should be doing, what I shouldn't be doing, like that kind of thing. Any
takeaways as far as diet and timing of food and stuff like that you're trying?
I've stopped intermittent fasting. Yeah. I was like, this is great. I'm going to eat breakfast again.
Okay, so you guys were fasting till lunch and then doing like lunch till 8 p.m. or whatever?
I mean, initially I was trying to fast, where I was eating breakfast and kind of stopping.
At like 4 p.m.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But
I think that's harder.
It's really challenging.
Tried both, and that's harder for me.
It's challenging also just from like a social standpoint, you know, like it's hard to be like, oh, sorry, I can't have dinner with you because I'm not eating. I know we like invited our friends out to dinner one night and then Mikey was like, well, I'm actually fasting all day. And I was like, well, I'm actually supposed to eat before 4.
We'll join you and have a water.
Yeah. And then we were like, okay, we take back our invitation.
Yeah. Well, let's get breakfast tomorrow instead.
Exactly. So I tried that for a little bit and then I did. It just naturally shifted into not eating until noon.
Okay.
And it ended up, you know, it is interesting. Like it's not hard to do after the first couple weeks. Yeah. But I just was feeling really heavy. Like I was doing really well with the fasting, but I was feeling really heavy. And I was like, this is the weirdest thing. Like, I'm just like, when I would get on the scale, I'd be like, this is super weird. Like the number reflects how I feel. Like I feel heavy and like I am heavy. And like, I haven't been this heavy for like I literally don't think I've ever been this heavy, you know? And so I was like, okay, I'm done with this.
You're climbing well, training weight. You're getting strong.
Exactly. Just wait until I lose these pounds.
Awesome.
I'll be sending.
She started eating breakfast again and just dropped the weight.
It's going to be great.
Crushed. That's really, really interesting. I mean, I'm absolutely no expert, but I am kind of geeked out on this sort of stuff. And I've read a lot of anecdotes and it actually does, there is something to that. It does seem that very generally men have better results from fasting than women. And obviously there's a lot of variation within males and females as well. But I also wonder, I mean, you're just adding more stress to your system. And it seems, and I could be wrong, but it seems like you have more stress in your day to day than Mikey does. And I wonder if that's a component of it too. You know, like you probably have more work stress, just higher cortisol all the time. And so adding one more stressor might just be
pushing it over the edge.
Yeah, just adding to the pile.
Yeah, no, I think that's a possibility. And I mean, I think that it might be beneficial to some women potentially, you know, and I think in my particular setting, I just, you know, after 6 weeks of this, I was like, this is very clearly not working for me, you know, and then I don't know. I also kind of, you know, this is kind of a separate note, but like, I also feel like it was getting a little bit unhealthy. Like, I feel like normally I eat like a balanced diet and, you know, I feel like things are very nicely in balance, but it just, with the fasting, things felt like a little bit out of balance, you know, and like, yeah, it just didn't feel quite right for me. So, okay. But I don't know. I mean, it might be for some people, but I just don't think it was for me.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, I think so far the book has been helpful in at least like guiding the way I think about it and kind of giving me new areas to look into.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I'll be sure to link to it in the show notes. It sounds super interesting. Right on.
Yeah.
Are you exploring, you mentioned bouldering and snacking earlier, and you just mentioned your balanced diet. Are you exploring different ways of eating at all on diet?
I think I'm going to just go back to
what you're doing,
to just kind of normal eating for me for a little bit. Okay. Like, yeah, I just think like I experimented the last, 6 to 8 weeks, maybe even more than that by this point. And I think I'm just ready to like, not experiment for a little bit.
Right on. Very cool. Is there a new habit or routine or belief that has been most impactful in your life recently?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I feel like I'm about to sound like an ad, but this is amazing.
Go for it.
So we moved into a new place in Reno, and so we were getting new furniture and like nightstands and stuff. And we came across this light so we were looking for lights for the nightstands, and we came across this light that it pretty much syncs with this app on your phone, and it'll turn on gradually in the morning.
Oh yeah.
Like as you're supposed to be waking up. And I am an awful morning person. I'm terrible. And like poor Mikey, I like hit snooze at least twice, and I'm always waking up in the dark, and it's always super early, and poor Mikey like wakes up the same time I do because I can't wake up to my alarm. But this light is amazing because it gradually turns on over the course of 30 minutes, and you just kind of wake up naturally to this light.
Nice.
And the feeling of waking up to the light is so much more peaceful than waking up to your alarm, and you actually wake up, and there's physiology behind, the light receptors
rhythm and all sorts of stuff. Yeah.
Etc. But it is miraculous.
Wow.
Like I wake up in the morning and I'm like, instead of like, like it's amazing.
Do you know what the name of it is?
So Casper makes it. It's
Casper.
like the Casper light, and it is.
I'll link to it.
It's definitely on the expensive side. Like it was right around like Black Friday when we were like furniture shopping and stuff, and I don't think we would have done it. But then Mikey's like kind of a tech geek, and he was like, "Oh, this is like really cool." And so since I had his buy-in, I was like, "Okay, fine, we'll try it." Yeah, because the lights are not cheap.
Yeah. And what's expensive?
It is. I think the two for like the Black Friday sale were like $200 maybe. Okay. So yeah, they're a pretty penny for sure. But
could change your life though.
They're amazing.
Nice. That's awesome.
So I'm a much more pleasant morning person now. And I've been drinking a glass of water in the morning. Okay. That's another thing I've been doing. So I'm working on becoming a morning person. Yeah.
Do you drink coffee?
I drink decaf coffee now.
Okay.
Yeah, I love coffee.
Yeah.
I would love to drink coffee every morning. But I was getting a little too into it, I think. I mean, like, coffee is addictive,
Yeah.
you know? And so, like, it just all of a sudden felt like I was dependent on the substance, which you very much are. And then I'm like, oh, if I, like, didn't have it within, you know, like, there were some mornings where I'm like, oh, I had, like, a rough week. I want to sleep in. If I, like, slept in too much and I, like, missed my coffee time, I would wake up with this headache.
Ooh.
You know? And I was like, man, this, like, caffeine withdrawal thing is...
Yeah.
super real. So I've been trying to dial it back and
Gotcha.
just like, I like the ritual. So I've been doing like nice Swiss water decaf coffee.
Ooh.
And then like on special occasions, I'll have real coffee.
Okay.
Yeah. And then on like semi special occasions, I'll have like half calf coffee.
Nice. That sounds perfect.
So yeah.
How much coffee were you drinking before? How much caffeine?
Not that much. I was just drinking the 1 cup in the morning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And maybe the truth comes out. And then like maybe once in a while, like a 2nd cup. But overall, I wasn't having a ton of coffee.
That's not much. I wonder if you're especially sensitive to it or something.
Yeah, no, it seemed like it. But it just, you know, I'm like traveling enough, or like, you know, my schedule is like wonky enough that like I just felt like it was wrong to be so dependent on this substance, that like it needed to happen at like X hour every day.
I just thought of a story. I remember, this is probably 10 years ago, but at one point I felt the same thing. I was like, I don't want to become dependent on this thing. And I went off coffee for a while. I told my sister, I think we're like a family get together or something. I was like, oh no, I'm not drinking caffeine for a while because I don't want to be dependent on it. And there was just this pause, and then she goes, why? Then you just get to have it every day.
That's what coffee drinkers
like,
all
oh,
say.
That's brilliant. I was thinking about it totally backwards. If I'm like addicted, then I just get to have it every day.
Yep. No, that's what people tell me as well.
I think you're onto something. No, I think there is. I've kind of gone actually closer towards what you're doing now, so that's pretty interesting. Is there a specific route that has taught you the most? That's a tough one. I threw that one out of the blue.
Yeah, I don't think so, because, you know, I think climbing, like, to be a good climber, you have to climb a lot of different things, a lot of different styles and types of things. And so I think everything teaches you something, and they all make you a little bit better, ideally. But I can't think of like one specific one that, you know, was like the one. You know, they've all kind of taught me something.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you have any advice or tips specifically for women trying to break into 514 or hard trad climbing?
So I think for anybody, there's like a few things that need to happen for you to climb 514, anything. I think you have to have like some amount of climbing under your belt, right? So you have to have like the experience, the technique, etc. Like, I think you have to be a good climber, and that's kind of a little blurrier, right? It's like hard to be like, oh yeah, I have good footwork, or, you know, I know how to like move my body in space. But I think that comes with time. I think you have to be strong enough, you know, so like, I think there's some aspect of training that goes into it. I think for women specifically, so Ollie Tor and Tom Randall from the Lattice Training guys, you know, like they have all this data about people based on all of their assessments, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and this goes back to the Lattice assessment that you did.
Yeah, and so I was listening to one of their podcasts that they had done, and what they were saying was that women have, like, ultimately, you know, our finger strength is good, etc. But what we're weak at is like our shoulder girdles are weaker. And I've found that to be super true. And I think that strength training from just like a lifting weights standpoint, or like doing pull-ups, you know, muscle ups, like those kinds of shoulder girdle things are important specifically for women. And I think, you know, another key component is just kind of injury prevention, because that that's what's going to keep you from climbing 514 is if you're getting injured trying to do it. And if your shoulder girdle is your weakest link, you know, you're going to hurt your shoulders because you can hang on, like our finger strength on a hole is generally sufficient, you know? And so it's like if you can hold on to the hold, but like you can't control your shoulder biomechanics, like that's the weak link. That's where you're going to hurt yourself. And so like I do think aside from just like specific climbing related strength and power training, I think like working on the shoulder girdle is super important. Like injury prevention is super important. And just like understanding like what your weak links are is super important.
So you spoke about weighted pull-ups. Are there any other specific exercises you do for your shoulder girdle strength?
So I think like antagonistic exercises are good. And so, you know, like the dumbbell kind of lifts,
I don't know what those are called. Yeah. So you have your arm straight out in front of you and you're just lifting your arm with your palm facing down, holding a dumbbell, lifting it up to like a 90.
Yeah. So like kind of helps with your deltoid and your rotator
whatever it is,
cuff.
I'll find it and I'll post a video in the show notes because I can't think of the name of that either.
Yeah. And like, you know, to the side.
Okay.
Like presses,
Overhead
push-ups,
presses.
you know, kind of like antagonistic exercises, like, you know, your external rotator exercises. It's like scapular stabilization kind of stuff because, you know, I think a lot of shoulder injuries happen because you're not stabilizing your scapula in space. And so like it leads to internal impingement as you're climbing and with overhead activity because the scapula has this, the acromion is like this extension of the scapula that kind of connects up front here to your clavicle.
Okay.
And so when you're doing overhead activities, if your scapula isn't moving appropriately in space, then the risk of your rotator cuff impinging on it becomes higher. There becomes a lot of like mechanics issues with it. And so you put yourself at like a much higher injury of, you know, supraspinatus tear, etc. And so I think the scapular stabilization exercises are super useful. And then, rotator cuff exercises, etc. So
cool.
Yeah. And then what else was I going to say? Oh, yeah. I had a story. So then I think the other thing about women specifically climbing 514 is that I think you have to, within reason, I think you have to believe you can do it.
Nice.
And it is super interesting. I mean, like, you can't just be like, you know, like, I just climbed 511 and like now, like, I want to climb 514. Like, you know, this is within reason. But it's super interesting. So when we were in residency, we had to do these self-assessments. So our bosses, our attendings would assess our surgical skill level, and then we would assess our surgical skill level. And we did this like per rotation and per year. And the pattern always was that the male residents would be very accurate in how they scored themselves. So they would say like, okay, like I am good at doing a knee scope, you know, like on a level from 1 to 5, I'm like, you know, a 2 or a 3 or whatever. And like what the attendings assessed them as would also be the same. So the males were very good at like assessing themselves at their level, whereas all the female residents would under assess themselves. So they would always be like, oh, out of, you know, a skill level between 1 and 5, you know, like I'm a 2, whereas all of the attendings would be like, oh, so-and-so is actually a 4 out of 5.
Wow.
And so that was like a very common pattern that was, you know, it was just an art training program, but I do think it's like a common thread specifically in women, you know, who just need to believe that they can do it, you know, and like I've luckily in my life just had enough people, you know, I've had enough mentors and, you know, like one of my good friends, Bailey Speed, she's always been like, oh yeah, of course you can do that. And I'm like, no, I can't do it. And she's like, yeah, of course, like you're going to do it, you know? And so I've been lucky to have people in my life who have given me that belief and like helped me recognize like, okay, this is the level I'm at in reality. And so I think that there are a lot of people out there who can, you know, climb at that level, but who are just intimidated by like what that number means, you know? And so I think, you know, within reason.
Yeah.
You just need to believe in yourself also.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah.
I'm curious. So do you think if there's someone out there who maybe doesn't have people telling them that they can do it and they have been climbing for a long time, they're very strong, do you think the lattice assessment would be helpful at all? An assessment like that tells you objectively, like, hey, on paper, you are strong enough to do, X, Y, or Z that you don't necessarily believe that you can do?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that would help. Okay. I think the tricky part about the lattice assessment, at least the part that I did, was that there's no assessment of your climbing ability, right? Like the technique aspect of it. And so that part is harder to gauge. But, I do think to some extent there is like an algorithmic aspect to this. If you are like doing max hangs with X amount and weighted pull-ups with X amount, like theoretically, yeah, you probably should be able to. And then like if you're not able to, I think then you kind of like revisit like, okay, what is holding me up kind of thing. Is it like a mental thing or is it, like a technique thing, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So are you working on your flexibility now?
Oh yeah, I'm trying. That's the other new thing I'm doing. Other than the Casper Lite, I got a subscription to Yoga Anytime, which is awesome. One of my friends she's a yoga teacher on it, and she's lovely. Her name's Lydia. So it's like my way of being able to hang out with Lydia all the time.
Nice.
Because she lives up in Canada.
Yeah.
But it's super nice. So it is like I am kind of working on my flexibility, and also it's like I can do yoga when it fits into my schedule instead of like, when the class is offered at the gym. So,
Nice. Awesome. Do you think it's improving yet? Have you noticed any change?
I'll get back to you.
I think it's the hardest thing, man. It's like, okay, I'm going to do this every day for 7 months and like, hopefully it makes a difference.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's like, I'm like,
forever.
I can like kind of touch my toes now, but no, I need to keep working on it. It's
right
hard.
Nice. So a couple times you mentioned Yosemite. You mentioned that you were down there, I think last year, and then that you were planning on going back in the spring. You have a project down there?
Of course. For as long as I remembered, even before I saw the thing, pretty much as soon as I started rock climbing, I've always wanted to free climb El Cap.
Yes. I was so hoping you were going to say that.
It's not very original, but it is a very impressive piece of rock.
It doesn't have to be original. It's just like the coolest thing in rock climbing.
It is the coolest thing in rock
just
climbing.
because other people are interested in it too doesn't make it less awesome.
That's true. I have to remind myself of that too.
Are you trying a specific route?
I put in some time on Freerider last season, and Mikey and I had previously gone up on Golden Gate like a few years ago, and I don't think I was really ready for it at that point in time, but I think, over the last few years I've put in some work, and I think I still have a little bit of work to do, but yeah, I think Freerider is doable.
Nice. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, and it's, as is often the case with people who are not, El Cap climbers, so to speak, like it's kind of the easier sections that are the hardest because it's kind of, it's like the blue collar wide climbing that's really hard, where it's like not super protected, and you're supposed to be moving fast through it, but you're like, oh, this is a 5'7" chimney, but like I can't protect it for like 30 feet, and like it's like all flaky out here. I'm gonna move super slow, like that's the kind of climbing that actually makes me more nervous on that route than anything. Like the hard climbing feels like a relief to me because like I'm like, oh, like I know how to like I'm like I know how to like handle like a granite boulder problem, or like like a granite finger crack. I'm like, I can do this. But you get into like the 5'10" climbing and you're like, oh geez, like this is hard.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah. And I think that's often the case, with people who haven't like, grown up climbing El Cap or like Yosemite a lot kind of thing.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. There's not really much else we do in rock climbing that prepares us for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. So are you going to be doing weekend trips down there, or do you have a longer trip planned?
I think initially just weekend trips until I feel like I'm ready. I'd like to climb out of it. So like from the enduro corners or from the boulder problem out, I think a lot of the harder climbing as far as number grades are up there. And I want it to feel on lockdown, because by the time you get up there, you're kind of tired from like hauling and doing the blue collar work earlier in the route. And so I just don't want it to be a question mark. So I think I'm going to go up there and just kind of do the top section on like a weekend trip or two and then try it ground up.
Sick.
So yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're like nearly ready to go for it, huh?
We'll see.
Maybe.
We'll
Fingers
see.
crossed. Okay. I'm like
Fingers
pre-spraying
crossed.
for you. That's awesome. Cool. Well, I'll be rooting for you. That's really cool.
Thank you.
What is something that you have been especially grateful for lately?
I think I kind of touched on this a little bit, but I am super grateful for just kind of all the people that believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Because, we've been talking about like accomplishments and successes and stuff, but like ultimately, the day to day is hard. And like sometimes like the picture isn't very clear cut and like you don't know what direction you're going in. And it's like sometimes hard to believe that, to believe in yourself, to like be like, oh, what I'm doing is worthwhile, or like I can even do what I'm doing, be it whether that's like work or whether that's climbing, or you're just tired or, and so. And there have been definitely periods through my residency and training that were very difficult, as just far as like knowing that I wouldn't be able to finish it. And I think during those times, like as a person, you're not like the most fun person to be around. Like people aren't like, oh yeah, let's like hang out with SJ then, like even through all of those times, like I've been super lucky to have people in my program, just kind of keep pushing me forward. And, Mikey has been instrumental in just, he like helps me make the most of the time I have, and like when I'm tired, he like reminds me like, hey, maybe you're not sending because you're tired and not because you're terrible. Because I'll be like, oh, I'm so terrible at this.
Isn't it fascinating how quickly that kicks on?
Yeah, you're like,
you have
oh.
one bad day and it's like, what happened to me?
Yeah, I'm
Nothing.
useless.
Chill out, dude.
Yeah,
You're fine.
exactly.
You're like, go take a nap.
Exactly. So it's just nice to have people who support you, even, when you're not being like 100% rational. And so that's what I'm grateful for. Like, I just have had so many people like help me along. And so that's how I am here the way I am today. So
cool.
yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. What about something you're excited about right now?
I'm excited to be in Reno.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I'm just like excited about like this time in life, like I feel like from a work standpoint, I work at the VA hospital in Reno, and I like my patients are great. Like I take care of veterans that like I can like really dedicate my time to, and it's like totally a different feeling when they're your own patients. Like you're more invested in them, and like it forces you to like learn a lot more. Like I spend like a lot more time now actually like studying and like looking through papers and like watching surgical videos on YouTube.
Cool.
Because like their outcomes really matter now that they're your like own patients. So like I'm like kind of excited about this like time in life. And then I'm excited to be in Reno because like the rock climbing around there is awesome.
Nice.
And then I'm excited for trips to the Hulk this summer.
Sweet. Yeah.
And yeah, it's good.
I was going to ask you this earlier. Do you feel like your work and climbing or work-life balance is better now that you have your job and you're not in residency anymore?
Oh no, it is much, much, much better.
Okay.
Much better.
I'm glad to hear that. That's cool.
It is much better. I feel like I think the balance is always a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's easy for me when I'm working to be like, oh, I shouldn't go climbing this weekend. Like, I really should just like keep working on X, Y, or Z thing. But then like, I'm always glad when I like take a break and climb. And then I'm like, oh, I really should climb more. but really, the balance is always a struggle, but like the balance is much more balanced than like there was no balance before in residency. It was like, and the point of residency is like you're there. It's like it's boot camp. It's like you're in it because the more time you're there, the better you become. And so there was no balance there. I was like just like slotting in, climbing whenever I could then, and like now, I feel like I can like I have like room for both. So that part is awesome.
Cool. Glad to hear that. That's awesome. That's exciting. Where can people find you?
In Reno. That's not what you mean. So on social media, my handle is Shanjean. So my first name, it's ShanJean. And so I think that's the primary way that I kind of share things that happen in life and any random thoughts that I have along the way.
Nice.
And I think that's the main way.
Okay. Do people call you Shanjean, or does everyone call you SJ?
I think it's a little bit of a mix. Okay. I think in the climbing world, most people call me SJ, but at work, most people call me Shanjean. And either one works.
No preference.
No, the only thing I wish is when I just want people who know me as SJ to know my real name.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of people who are they just think my name is SJ, but I'm like, actually, I'm Shanjean.
I have a name.
Exactly. Like I like love SJ because it's kind of like it's my like close friends have always like called me that as endearment, and that has just like spread on. But then at a certain point, I was like, dude, I was like, they don't know my actual name. And like the crazy thing is like my parents are from Taiwan, and they do this thing where like they put a lot of thought into it, like because it's like based on like the time that you're born and what day you're born, and like whatever kind of random astrological stuff is going on, but like based on when you were born, like each character has a certain number of strokes, and so like they thought like very carefully about my name. And it means Emperor's Councilor in Chinese.
Kidding?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so just kind of like as a tribute.
How's that role playing out in your life?
Well, so initially when I found out that's what it meant, I was like, Mom, this sucks. Like, why am I the counselor? And I'm like, not the emperor. I was like, this is because I'm a chick, huh? But then her very nice answer was that she's like, well, the counselor is the one with the real power. Nice. And I was like, okay. So I think, maybe it's working out.
I derailed you though. You were saying as a tribute, and then I cut you off.
Oh yeah, just as like a tribute to like the amount of like time and love that she put into the name. That
people should know your name.
I was like, oh, my name's Shanjean. Yeah. And so.
And know that I'm a motherfucking counselor to the emperor.
Yeah. So take that. Exactly.
Well, SJ, this has been so much fun. Thanks for sitting down. This has
been great. Of course.
I've seen you so many times at Smith Rock, and I see you hustling to get climbing, to fit in climbing. I always see you trying hard. I don't think I've ever seen you pull onto the rock and not make try hard noises and really go for it. But you always have a smile on your face. I've also never seen you grumpy or pissed off. You're always in a good mood and delightful to talk to you. So it's just a really wonderful combination.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not smiley all the time.
You save it all up for Mikey.
Yes, lucky Mikey. He gets to see it all, but he's very patient and tolerant. And overall, I try not to be too much of a grump. So.
Right on.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
It's been a blast. Best of luck on your boulder projects, and I'm excited to see what happens in the valley.
Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Awesome. Thanks.
Move with the rhythm. Shake it up, stop when the clock hits 13. Sing 1, 2, 3, 4. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it. Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we do it.